Corey Court, man, that's a tongue twister already.
Yeah.
How the hell are you guys? It's so good to see you guys, man.
Yeah, it's great to see you too. Thrilled to be here. It's we haven't seen you since you were on our show. We were talking about Credence.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Back in the early days, the swamp days.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe. Am I correct that Jesse was our first guest on 6 o'clock Dad Rock Talk? I think
it was either him or RJ.
Yeah, might have been RJ, but I think it was you, Jesse.
I know I was on in the early days, and the show has gotten so good. Like, not that that one wasn't good, but like you go and you build your momentum, and you figure out, oh, this worked, that didn't work, and
yeah. There's plenty of that when you're building any kind of show. Early on, Court and I were talking about how one thing we have in common when it comes to producing shows is we both really get a kick out of format and like the evolution of format and like finding out what works and what doesn't. And a show shouldn't stay the same from day 1 to day 50. Like, you should grow. You should figure out how to make it better. And we've had a lot of fun since day 1. I think just saying like let's try something new. Like, we never landed on a format and we're like, we have to do it this way. Every episode has been a little different.
Yeah, it's very flexible.
Yeah, and it's got to be like that. So sometimes I have guests on these top fives and they're like, well, I don't know if this technically is. I'm like, yeah, it is.
Who gives shit? yeah,
absolutely.
We've run into that a lot with Dad Rock because, I mean, from the beginning, we established that Dad Rock is a very vague genre, if you even want to call it a genre. It's more of an atmosphere. It's a vibe, So we've had people come to us with like, we like this, but I don't know if it's really Dad Rock. This next week we're doing Eels. Most people would not say that's Dad Rock. I think it is in the sense that it's dated, and a certain older generation would have an affinity for it. So that makes it Dad Rock.
And those guys are dads now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Dad Rock.
Yeah. I've been trying to categorize my albums, and my Dad Rock category has just expanded to like, now it includes like metal.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like what we call on the show Uncle Rock. we consider metal to be Uncle
You're
Rock.
absolutely
like
right.
Iron Maiden is not Dad Rock, that's Uncle Rock.
Yeah, I think Uncle Rock is a really good category. Yeah, because and it's like Linda Ronstadt is in my Dad Rock, and but when I first categorized them, like my metal was like this big, and I was like, oh no, let's just going in with Dad Rock. You're not special metal. Yeah. So I want to do a couple of quick congratulations. So Corey, when you were the last time we talked about having you on my podcast, you and I and your lovely wife were sitting at the callback bar, and you guys were about to get married. And I said, would you guys please come back and be on my podcast as husband and wife? And you guys were like, sure. And then
the global pandemic.
So, congratulations. Married life looks like it's treating you very well.
It really is. I think husband is a good title for me. I think I fit it well. and she's a hell of a wife. We're real happy. Thank you.
Yeah. It suits both of you very well. I think I can speak for a lot of single guys. When you post those pictures of those meals she makes and her creations in the kitchen, we're just like, fuck that dude, man.
Oh, believe me, it is not something I take for granted.
Yeah. And Court, congratulations to you. You recently made an announcement about your education.
Yeah, I found out that I got into a PhD program in Illinois that I had applied to. So getting ready for a big change of location.
Wow. Yeah. When are you going to do that?
Midsummer.
Okay.
Midsummer.
I was just going to say, let's hope not.
I still have a couple, and I don't know where they're at right now, but I still have a couple of Beach Boy records.
I had forgotten you told me about
that I want to get to you. But I told you about that like middle of the pandemic when like nobody wanted to go to anyone's house.
Yeah.
Like you're probably like, look at this reckless guy. Like trying to give me records he found at a yard sale. Like, but I don't know where they're at. I know one of them is Wild Honey,
That's a good
and,
album.
and another one is something else, and one of them is still sealed
Oh, really?
in the shrink. Yeah.
That's cool.
So that is really cool about it. I'm not the biggest Beach Boy. I respect the Beach Boys. I love the Beach Boys, but I only own Pet Sounds. I know. And what's this, Surfing Safari?
Oh yeah, the first one.
Yeah. So those that's the extent of my Beach Boys collection.
Mm.
But we're not here today to talk about the. I think the Beach Boys are going to come up because they're running parallel at this, like during the same time that we're going to be talking about some of these songs. So I think that's one of the sidebars that I wanted to ask Court about a couple of times during the recording. But today we are talking about the top 5 songs of the British invasion, not including the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, which that just sounds like so hard because when you first said the topic, I just Google searched top hits of the British invasion, and you had to scroll
Yeah.
and scroll, and then but within that some gems started to rise to the top, and I think my number one might be a little bit controversial, but it's my show.
Right. Yeah.
So we're just gonna go round robin, and let's just jump in and let's see where this takes us. Corey, you want to start us off? What's your number?
Sure. 4? All right. So I'm starting off with what will appear on some level, I think, as a pretty obvious one. I kind of had to throw it in there because it is pretty damn important, and that's "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks. I feel like it's the signal to a wave of rock and roll that really took over in the States, and that's music that scares your parents. Because it's got, that I think it's the first time that there's the full-on fuzz distortion. It's not the first like distorted guitar, but it's like the fuzz distortion because he took a razor blade to his speaker in his amp and got. Yeah, that's how he gets that sound. It's not an effect pedal because that didn't exist yet. He literally made that sound, and it like I said, it's music to scare your parents because it has a certain sneering quality to it. It's not well-behaved lads. It's not. It's really and to think they were scared of the Beatles. These same uptight parents, they were scared of the Beatles. The Kinks come out and it's like, holy shit, like these are bad kids.
Yeah.
And it is a great song. I don't really listen to it a whole lot, but when you're talking about an invasion, come on, that's what this one was. So
yeah. And I love that you say that it's music to scare your parents, because like I've always said that, like a long time ago, somebody asked me to define rock and roll, and I gave up on trying to define it of like, well, in 1955 or like in 1990,
Sure.
my definition of rock and roll is the first time your parents said, "What the hell is that crap? What are you listening to?" And that's your rock and roll. Like the first time, because we all grew up with songs that like got handed down to us from our parents, our brothers, our sisters, our cousins. But eventually we all hit this point where we're like, this is mine. And for me, it was the Beastie Boys, right? For me, it was Beastie Boys and License to Ill. And I can still remember my sister saying, turn that shit down. And I was like, you don't get it. You don't get it.
And then your mom threw away your best porno mag.
Right?
That was very upsetting.
I was upset, but I had another one.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. All right, man. The Kinks. Let me keep going with the numbers right here. And Court, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is "Glad All Over" by the Dave Clark 5. It is the song that knocked "I Wanna Hold Your Hand" off of the UK #1 chart. And for a couple years, the Dave Clark 5, more so than the Stones or the Who or any of the bigger bands, they were viewed as like the main competitors with the Beatles. Like they were the second British invasion band to have a huge hit in the States after the Beatles. And it's just a cool sounding song. There's a really neat saxophone effect in it, where rather than it being like a lead melody of the saxophone, it's kind of paired with the drums to create a kind of reverby echo effect. It's hard to explain, but it's very cool. And it's just a catchy kind of sing along, call and response sort of song that you can see why it would be such a big hit in 1963. And I think that Dave Clark had, for some reason, he held on to the rights to the songs, and like there were no reissues of their albums on CD for a long time, and it only recently came to streaming. So whereas a lot of these other bands became like classic rock mainstays on the radio, because of the licensing, or I don't remember the specific details, but there was some issue where their stuff just was not played further on down the line the way their contemporaries did. But I think they're great and deserve closer attention. They're often in the like 99-cent bin at record stores.
Yeah, it's true. When their name came up a lot, I did a lot of Googling when this topic was introduced, and their name came up a lot. I didn't know that they were such competitors with the Beatles at that time. And I think I also want to point out that, like, what did you guys have a time frame of what you categorized the British invasion? Because like for me, I kind of stuck between 1963 and 1968.
That's about where mine are too, I think.
Yeah, mine are not by decision or anything, but mine just happened to be all 64 and 65. So mine are kind of like smack dab in the middle of the invasion. But I think your time frame is perfect for British invasion. Yeah. I think once you get to 69, it's not really an invasion anymore.
No, I think
it's an occupation.
Yeah.
But Billy Joel described it once perfectly, and I hadn't put it together until I heard Billy Joel talk about it once, and he said that so the Beatles are on Ed Sullivan February 1963, but he said that at the time America was in a funk because November 1962 JFK is assassinated, and just the whole country is just like sad, right? Yeah. And then like 3 or 4 months later, when we need something to cheer us up, the Beatles come on Ed Sullivan, and it's just like, oh my gosh, we have something to cheer about now. So maybe the time is right now for a new kind of invasion, because I think we're about to hit a time where everything is going to be great, and well, not great, but everything is going to be a lot better. So we're kind of like at the same time right now. We're getting ready to come out of something that was just miserable, but for a much longer time. But
I'm calling it now. It's ska.
It's ska. It's a ska revival. Yeah.
Ska revival.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This will be the third.
As long as it's not the swing revival again, I'm gonna be fine with it.
Yeah, I'm never gonna forgive.
Swing at full
I'm never
cost.
gonna forgive Gen Xers for swing revival.
Nope.
That's their biggest sin.
Yeah.
But can we agree that the Squirrel Nut Zippers were pretty freaking rad? Or
Still are. They're a good band that I don't give a shit about. Like anytime my little brother will show me some songs, and I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I like this. I'm never going to listen to this. I'm never going to sit down and listen to this. You know?
Yeah, I get it. Okay. Well, my number 5 is we have our. Where did my pen go? Here it is. My number 5. We have our first double. My number 5 is the Kinks. You Really Got Me.
Nice.
Yeah, and released in August of 1964. There was a rumor, though they tried to say that it was Jimmy Page on guitar.
Yeah, debunked. Yeah. Totally not true.
Yeah, and he said that it is not true. And of course, this song was made famous again in 1978 with Van Halen's cover on their debut album. Which a lot of bands, when they're at their debut album phase, like they've been like playing live for a few years, and they're playing live with like a deep repertoire of covers, So so my number 5 is the Kinks. You Really Got Me from August of 1964. You know what else I'm noticing is these songs, It's only 2 minutes and 14 seconds long.
Yeah, it's radio friendly. Like it's very conscious, of like we need to have concise things so we can get to the programming blocks. Like, because radio doesn't exist for the pure joy of music. It exists to
No,
sell, like you need
commercial.
commercial space. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. All right. We are at our number 4s. What do you got for number 4, Corey? And we'll keep the same order tonight.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going slightly deep with my number 4, with Go Now by the Moody Blues. This was off their debut album, when they still had Denny Lane. And it's a very different Moody than what people would be familiar with if they're just in the sort of psychedelic camp of Moody Blues, Nights in White Satin, which I would say would be an alternative for me. I was first thinking Nights in White Satin, but this one I do love more. And this, I think, falls a little more in line with the British Invasion because it was a crossover hit. It was number 1 in the UK. It got to number 10 in the US. So it wasn't as successful as later stuff that they had. But it's a great song because it's still the Moody Blues when they were heavily R&B. They were a Mersey beat band. It was so of its time. It's a great record. His voice sounds amazing on it because he has this breaking quality with some of it just has to do with the natural distortion of the microphones at the time, but he hits some of these notes that just break your heart. It's such a powerful song. Yeah, Go Now with an exclamation point. That's important. Go now.
Go Now. All right, Go Now, the Moody Blues. Number 4. Corey, what is your number 4?
My number 4 is Carrie Ann by the Hollies, which is another just infectious song with a great sing-along chorus. Hollies was Graham Nash's group before he left for Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And from what I understand, the Hollies were pretty content to stay in the British Invasion kind of almost bubblegum pop, that kind of zone. Whereas Graham Nash wanted to experiment more and make things a little bit weirder. And so some of the songs that are on the first Crosby, Stills, and Nash album were songs that he brought to the Hollies that they didn't want to do.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
And nonetheless, the Hollies are great because they put so much emphasis on vocal harmonies, which not a lot of the British Invasion groups did. A lot of them were more guitar driven or blues influenced. But with the Hollies, you just have these like very shimmering background vocals and harmonies that just are so good. And this song in particular, I think, showcases that.
Nice. The Hollies at number 4. I don't think we've heard the last of the Hollies on this list. Yeah, I really like the Hollies. And yeah, you could hear that early harmonization that went on to be Crosby, Stills, Nash, in a lot of the Hollies work.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of their harmonies, because I'll find any excuse to bring this perfect songwriter up. The Hollies do a cover of Judy Sill's Lady O, and the most beautiful thing about it is the harmonies that they have on it. They don't change a whole lot about the arrangement, except they layered so many beautiful harmonies over the song that in the original version didn't have any of that kind of element to it. And it's just a cool sort of connection because Graham Nash produced her most successful single, which was Jesus Was a Crossmaker. So it's cool that he like dug her so much that he then brought it to his band.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, my number 4, another short song, 2 minutes and 25 seconds, December of 1964, The Zombies, She's Not There. Friggin' love this song. Rolling Stone magazine in their top 500 songs of all time put it at number 297. She's Not There, one of the lyrics is taken from a John Lee Hooker song, and again, I think Court just mentioned it. A lot of these songs have like a lot of these artists at the time are really influenced by the blues. Well, especially like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, like we know that for sure. But then when we start getting into these other songs, like you could hear like just these really bluesy, these really soulful vocals, and I think you really hear it here, especially that it's taken from a John Lee Hooker song. Santana does a great cover of this. It's on, I think, his Moonflower album. But and Santana is one of those bands that like you go see him live, you know for sure he's gonna do like Oye Como Va and Black Magic Woman, and then the rest of the show you're just like wonder what he's gonna play, you know. And when he did Wheatland a couple summers ago, he did this song, and they scorched it. I mean, it was just like, and the whole crowd knew it was a treat. Like the whole crowd was just like, oh my, because he did it with a couple of the guys from the Doobie Brothers. It was like one of the songs at the very, like the Doobie Brothers opened up, and it was like one of the songs at the end when they just jammed, and everyone knew that like that was such a treat to get to see that. So my number 4 is the Zombies, She's Not There. All right, Corey, what do you got at number 3?
Well, this actually works out perfect because my number 3 is She's Not There by the Zombies. So I guess I'll just touch on something that I just love about the song and just the band in general. And that's their use of dynamics. Their arrangements of songs are so interesting, especially for the time, because they love to do that thing where like the verse would be very cool and mysterious, and then you have the explosion of the chorus. I really dig that. You also get it with Time of the Season, probably even more so with Time of the Season. Like that dynamic is so clear. And yeah, this is just a great song. It's so spooky, and yeah, I love the atmosphere of it. They build a wonderful atmosphere.
Yeah, great song. All right, that's the second time we've had crossover.
Well,
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
it gets weirder because my number 3, if you were all done.
Yeah, we're ready.
My number 3 is also by the Zombies, but it is a different song. It is Care of Cell 44 off of Odyssey and Oracle.
What's the song called?
Care of Cell 44, which is a very nice song written about missing someone who's in prison. And it's probably my favorite Zombie song and one of my favorite songs ever. It just has it's just so pleasant, and the vocals are so crisp on it. Yeah, it just has a really great sunny atmosphere despite the content of the lyrics. And it just shows off the crazy production work on the Odyssey and Oracle album, that still I think is underrated as far as classics of like the Baroque pop of the 60s. That still doesn't get enough credit, I don't think. Yeah.
All right, the Zombies, number 3, Care of Cell 44. I'm gonna have to give that one a spin. Okay, so my number 3 is the Hollies with Bus Stop. Came out September of 1966. It's so freaking catchy, but it's the sound. I think what I wanted to point out was that, so this came out in like 1966, and the Beatles did Rubber Soul in 1965, and you could just see how like that influenced the, like a little bit of change in the dynamic, a little bit like the lyrics are like the grooves are a little bit trippier, a little bit more experimental, you know. And it was yeah, so this came out in 66, and the harmonies are just freaking beautiful. And you could, like we touched on earlier, like this was Graham Nash like 2 years before he splits to do Crosby, Stills and Nash, right? So he left them in 1968 to do Crosby, Stills and Nash. And then was Woodstock in 69? Because like that kind of like,
yeah,
That kind
Yeah.
and Crosby, Stills, and Nash played Woodstock.
Mhm.
So like that's crazy that that band was still so new. But I guess with veteran players, you know, because the like great bands aren't an accident. You know, it's like a lot of times like great bands like there's guys that were in like kind of good bands end up being in these great bands, and I think we're seeing. I think at this point we're seeing like uh, Graham Nash getting ready to fly the coop, and it's just like
Mhm.
kind of like reached his limitations with this band. But it's a great way to end it with the. I don't know if that's exactly where it ended with the Hollies, but
You can
it's
hear
great
it.
that you could hear it, you know.
Yeah.
And but that's my number three. The Hollies Bus Stop. So catchy.
Oh yeah.
Corey, we are at your number two.
All right. So I went with Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter by Herman's Hermits. I chose this not just because I love this song, but also because to me, it's the most British of all the British invasion songs. You could not get more British. In fact, he, like the lead singer on it, whose name escapes me right now, it's not Herman, but he even exaggerates his English accent, like to be more appealing to an American audience. I didn't know until reading about the song for the first time today that it was something of a standard in like the local sort of band scene in England at the time. To where when Herman's Hermits recorded it, they had no idea that it would be a hit, like in the UK or overseas, let alone. To the point that it was like a standard at birthday parties and stuff, and you would replace Mrs. Brown with whoever the name of the birthday girl was. It's just it's a cutesy song. It's very cheeky because I don't know, I don't know what more I could say about it. It's great. It was a huge success, but it's one of those huge successes that is kind of swept under the rug now because of the Beatles and the Stones, and like there's only so much that the media can talk about as far as British invasion things. So certain things get a little ignored, which is why I think we wanted to do the episode like we're doing, so we could talk about stuff.
We talk
like
about these bands that people should be talking about
Yeah.
as well, right? Okay, Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter by Herman's Hermits. Court, what do you got at number two?
My number two, and speaking of getting people to listen to these bands, my number two is Fresher Than the Sweetness in Water by the group Honey Bus, alternatively known as the Honey Bus. This is like the best Beatles song not written by a member of Beatles. And I don't mean that to say that it sounds derivative, just that it is as good as the best Beatles songs. And this song is actually later than I realized. It's actually from 1970. They only released one album while they were together, and then there's been some pretty good like anthology releases collecting all their like unreleased tracks and stuff like that. And they're just a group that I stumbled across. I don't even know how I came across them because I had never heard of them before a few years ago. But I heard this song and I was immediately like locked in, as it's one of the most catchy songs, and it's got really good fuzzy guitar, and it just has all the elements are there for it to be a classic, but for whatever reason they just didn't quite catch despite having a few hits that were pretty big in England.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I started listening to Honey Bus like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
And I dig it so much, and it's such a bummer that there wasn't more of an output. And I wonder if it's because when you look at the lineup, like none of them are multi-instrumentalists. Like they wouldn't have been playing those lush string arrangements live. And I wonder if like that kind of contributes to why they didn't have much staying power. Because how do you duplicate those songs live? It would have felt bare, because they were, when you look at the lineup, they are just a pretty standard pop rock outfit, you know. But to me, like that's not the hook of their sound. The hook is these lush arrangements. So maybe.
Yeah.
Great band though. Everyone should look up Honey Bus.
Yeah, if you're a fan of like the Beatles or Emmett Rhodes,
Mm,
very
also
kind of
recently
very
started listening.
similar to Emmett Rhodes, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
So check them out.
Court's going deep with his picks, and I love it. Like I'm getting some homework here, man. All right. My number two is the Yardbirds, For Your Love. Um, what is it? 1965, dude. So like at this time, you've got like Clapton, Beck, and Page just kind of like bumming around looking for a band, like trying to find like it's so crazy that 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 all these great guitarists were just like waiting to be born during this time frame, and of course all go on to just be mega stars. Um, there's like a bongo solo in this song. There's like 3 different tempo changes. You know, the song is all over the place, and Clapton really only plays. There's like this breakdown in the middle of the song, and like the later part of the breakdown, you could definitely hear Clapton's tone. Like you don't, because like I was like, this doesn't sound like Clapton to me. But then I started reading more about it, and he really only plays there's a breakdown in the middle of the song, and that's where Clapton is playing. Otherwise, it's studio musicians. And this is written by Graham Goldman, who also wrote the Hollies Bus Stop. Yeah. So you know that it was a hit song is no accident. You know, and he shopped it around to a bunch of different bands. His manager said, "Oh, you should sell this to the Beatles or get this to the Beatles." And then he shopped it around to a bunch of different bands. And then he was in a band who was like the warm-up band on Top of the Pops. And then eventually there was one night where his band warmed up the audience, and then the Yardbirds were the guest band, and they played this song. And he's like, I wrote that. You know,
That's cool.
Yeah, they were the big stars. So yeah, the Yardbirds, For Your Love.
Nice.
Okay, so before we get to our number ones, man, we're zipping along through these. Before we get to our number ones, I took to Facebook earlier this morning, like I like to do, and I asked, our friends, because we share a lot of the same friends. I asked our friends to post what they thought were some of the top songs of the British invasion, but I also told them you can't pick the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. So, well, the first one, you guys probably don't know this guy. A friend of mine from Bakersfield, Philip DeRoche.
Oh, Philip.
Oh yeah, you know Phil. Yeah, he's doing great. You guys played Little League together. Yeah, his dad coached. So he comes in with, and I don't think he gives me any order. He just goes, She's Not There by the Zombies. Here's one we haven't talked about. Needles and Pins by the Searchers. Heart Full of Soul by the Yardbirds. You Don't Have to Say You Love Me by Dusty Springfield. And Bus Stop by the Hollies. So kind of right in there with us. Dan Scott, beer connoisseur, improviser, and close personal friend of all of ours.
And a real music connoisseur as well.
Yeah, he is. I'm gonna have to get him on here soon, but yeah, he's love talking music with that guy. He comes in with the Kinks, You Really Got Me, and All Day and All of the Night. The Zombies, She's Not There and Tell Her No, and pretty much anything else. So that's all he had. Rhoda D. Ramone just commented with Dedication Flower of Fashion by the Kinks, Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks, Making Time by Creation, The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies, Dusty Springfield, Son of a Preacher Man, The Way I Feel Inside by the Zombies, and House of the Rising Sun by the Animals.
I feel so silly now for not including Dusty Springfield. I love Dusty Springfield.
I was afraid to go down the Dusty Springfield rabbit hole. Like, of course, I put my research off to the last minute, and Dusty Springfield came up so much, but I knew so little about.
Sure, same. Yeah.
I was afraid to go down that rabbit hole. Rhoda's got great taste in music. I just messaged her maybe about a week ago and tell her I need to get her on a top 5. So she'll be on a top 5 soon. We still just haven't settled on a topic. And okay, that's all. Did you guys have any songs that you were like, oh, this is almost about to make my list, but not quite? Do you have any also rans?
Making Time by The Creation was one of my also rans.
Mm-hmm. Corey, did you have any?
I was a little torn with my number 2. I was also another Herman's Hermit song. Something Tells Me I'm Into Something Good, which is such a sunshiny sort of like, and I think that's definitely a better known song. But then, like a couple spots on my list, with Go Now especially, I just thought, it's my top 5. Like, I like this song more, so I'm gonna go with this one. But yeah, I'd say I'm Into Something Good would be an also ran for me, and then Nights in White Satin for
yeah. Nights in White Satin, was that late in the British invasion?
Yeah, that was
that like 69 or 68?
Let's see.
All right. Are we losing your audio?
67.
Oh, 67. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
I also had Colors by Donovan as an also ran. Very pretty song. It's just him on guitar. There's a really good live version from some TV thing on YouTube where it's him and Pete Seeger is playing banjo as well. And it's cool to hear a folky like Donovan doing, like, kind of merging with American folk on that. It's really nice.
Just because I want to talk about Bruce Springsteen, if you ever get a chance, Bruce Springsteen, the Seeger Sessions is great. And then he does the Seeger Sessions live in Dublin. The band that he puts together for that is just smoking. So pay me my money down. And they do a couple of Springsteen songs in that fashion. It's great stuff. Great stuff. All right, we're at our number ones. Corey, what do you have at your number 1?
All right, coming in hot here. Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood by the Animals. I think it perfectly encapsulates the appeal to teenagers. And it's certainly not what the song was written to be, because it wasn't like written by the Animals. It was written for Nina Simone, who recorded it first, with a very different sort of arrangement. When the Animals took it, they made it a lot more blues rocky and that sort of thing. But I don't think it's too much of a stretch to project this sort of call to arms, or not even a call to arms, a call to sympathy for teenagers. Because how could you not like relate to that hook of like, I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Don't let me be misunderstood. Like, being a teenager and feeling like your parents just don't get you, and the world doesn't get all these strange feelings you have, and it just has such a great energy to it. I think it's the best of the British Invasion, because it hits all those points for me so well. And the voice, how do you deny that voice? It's so great.
Yeah, Eric Burden, man. Yeah. All right, good song. Court, what's your number 1?
My number 1 is by Chad and Jeremy, and the song is Painted Dayglow Smile off of their 1968 album, The Ark, produced by the wonderful, incredibly talented Gary Usher. It was Columbia Records' like most expensive album up to that point, and it was so expensive that it got Gary Usher fired as a Columbia producer. So that's why after 67, 68, you stopped having Gary Usher producing groups like the Byrds and all these other bands that were on Columbia, because he had lost them so much money on this album, which, along with its predecessor, which was called Of Cabbages and Kings, they due to just unfortunate circumstance, they were written off as just trying to copy Sergeant Pepper's. And when you see the cover art for of Cabbages and Kings, especially, it has the same sort of, it's, like staging a photograph with like weird vibrant colors and stuff, with the stuff in the foreground and background. What am I trying to say? The album, this song in particular is just so good, and it's such a beautiful production, that it just goes all over the place. It goes from like slow, sad kind of ballad to sounding almost like Electric Light Orchestra toward the end. There's just so many little tiny details in the arrangement and production of this song that I think that it kind of speaks for itself when you listen to it, and people should give Chad and Jeremy a fairer shake, because they kind of got mocked a lot for being just the most like posh of the British invasion bands. Like, they didn't have any real rock and roll credibility or anything. And then these albums came out and were seen as just a psychedelic cash in, but they're really their own thing. They're working with Gary Usher, who's like a production genius. He started out working with Brian Wilson and worked with all sorts of groups later on. And just, Painted Dayglow Smile was one of their last singles before they broke up. And it's such a good send off. I would compare it to She's Leaving Home. And it's kind of where there's like different kind of parts to the song, and it, picks up and slows down. But I like it even. It's one of my top 5 favorite songs ever, I think.
Oh, wow. Court, I want to ask you, because you really know a lot about the Beach Boys. What during this time frame, 63 to 68, where are the Beach Boys at musically? And are the Beach Boys influencing this sound, or is this sound influencing the Beach Boys?
I would say this sound is influencing the Beach Boys in that period. Mm-hmm. Because when the Beatles hit, that was what knocked the Beach Boys off the top of the charts. And suddenly they had to compete literally for advertising space, because both were signed to Capitol Records. And so a lot of the advertising money that was going into promoting Beach Boys singles was reallocated to the Beatles. And that was one of the things that spurred Brian Wilson to really start putting more time into coming up with the production. And it's around that time that he stopped touring with the group so that he could focus solely on songwriting and producing. And there's definitely a back and forth between the Beach Boys and the Beatles during this period, where you have Revolver coming out and influencing Pet Sounds, and then Pet Sounds in turn influences Sgt. Pepper's. And I think that Brian Wilson got freaked out by the Beatles, because suddenly, after everyone telling him that he was on top as the American songwriter guy, and then the Beatles come and just blow them out of the water. And if you listen to early Beatles songs, they are so much more fully formed than early Beach Boys songs. And it was that competition, and the Beatles, just in general, the British invasion's tendency to experiment more, that really pushed the Beach Boys into new creative directions, just for the sake of being able to compete on the charts.
But like, whereas you say that the Beatles songs were more structurally sound, like the Beatles had George Martin in their corner. Did the Beach Boys have a great producer in their corner?
They had Brian.
Brian was doing it, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, their early albums, their first 2 albums, I want to say, were co-produced by Brian, and then a Capitol staff producer named Nick Vinay, who is a fine producer in his own right, but Brian was still kind of coming into his own in the studio. And the songwriting, there's a lot of clunkers on the first couple Beach Boys albums, because they just didn't have material yet other than Cars and Surfing. And there was no reason for them to go outside of that as long as they were at the top of the charts. But
Right,
when
there's no need for it. Yeah.
eventually it reached a point where it was commercially and creatively unsatisfying to just stay in that mold. And they wouldn't have, I don't think they would have really changed their sound as much as they did without the kind of encroaching invasion onto their turf.
Wow, that's some good insight, man. Thanks for sharing that. That's really good. That's really good stuff. Okay, we're gonna move on. Okay, we're at my number one, right? Yeah, that's where we are. My number one, 1964, and this song comes in at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, and it's the Animals, "The House of the Rising Sun." I love this song. We're going back to Eric Burden again. That voice and he did it. So it's like, it's a traditional song that like no one really knows like who wrote it. It's like the earliest recording of it was like from 1933 by this artist, Clarence Tom Ashley. And he just said it was a song his grandfather used to sing. So is there really a house in New Orleans? Some say there was a brothel. Some say it was a women's prison. A lot of controversy about all of that. But I knew this one. I knew I wanted this to be my number one when I started the list. But then when I realized that that it was a cover, and that, so when I knew I wanted this to be my number one all along. But then when I got to doing the research on it, and I realized that they didn't write it, and that we really didn't know who wrote it, I kind of almost didn't want it to be my number one. But then, like, when I think about, like, so much of this music was like influenced by the blues and by R&B, you know, and then like I thought it was a good way to end my list, because it's so weird that like American blues and R&B and soul influenced the British invasion, but then the British invasion would go on to influence like the Doors, you know, and that psychedelic bluesy sound. Like the Doors were all over the place, like blues and psychedelic, and like the Hammond B3, you know, and I think that, like, you know, they complemented each other, and you know, everything kind of comes full circle, you know. So this British music that was inspired by this American music later inspired new American music, you know. So I'm cool with having the Animals, the House of the Rising Sun. And then Rhoda Ramone just validated it for me, and she put it at number one on her list. And we all know how cool she is. So I'm cool with having the Animals, my number one, with the House of the Rising Sun.
Oh yeah, it's a great song, and I love that you talked about the sort of like lineage of the song, because one of the funniest things to me about the song is, and this is an incomplete sort of anecdote, but I don't know the name of like the first guy in the story. It might even be the guy you were talking about, but he was well known for his rendition of it. He was a folk artist, and he'd been playing it around for years. It was kind of one of his signature songs. And then Bob Dylan recorded his version.
Yeah.
And then whenever this first guy would play it, everyone would go, "Hey, you're playing Dylan." He's like, "No, I'm not playing Dylan. I'm playing the old standard." And then the fun turnaround was that then the Animals come out with theirs. And then whenever Bob Dylan would play it, they go, "Oh, you're playing the Animals." and then like, I think that original first guy got wind of that, and he just thought that was the most beautiful justice that Bob Dylan wasn't getting credit for the song. He wasn't getting it either, but at least it wasn't Bob Dylan.
Yeah, and I'm sure Dylan hated that.
Dylan probably didn't give a shit.
That's true. That's true. Dylan did Dylan, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're at the fun part, where we're going to take our top fives, and we're going to try to agree on a top five. And I guess we usually say that stuff that gets mentioned more than once kind of automatically makes the top five, which in this list, we've got the Kinks. You Really Got Me gets mentioned twice. Hold on, my handwriting is horrible. I tried to write in cursive the other day and about had a stroke.
It's hard.
I lasted like 3 words, and I was like, I don't even know why I tried to prove that to myself. Okay, so the Kinks and the Zombies, she's not there.
Yeah.
Get mentioned twice. I think that's the only. Yeah, that's the only crossover. Um, yeah. So we got 2 of them, and the Animals as a band get mentioned twice.
And the,
And the Hall, I think the Hollies. Did the Hollies get mentioned twice?
Yeah, we had
Yeah,
Carrie
yeah, Court
Ann
had them. Yeah, Court
and
had
Bus
them,
Stop.
Carrie Ann, and I have them with Bus Stop. And then, okay, so we need 3 songs, and I think what would be fair, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this way, is that we could hammer out the last 3 songs by each of us fighting for 1 song from each of our lists, right? So,
sure.
um, like Corey, if you had to say, now you really got me. So you've got the Moody Blues. Oh, you've got the Zombies too.
Yeah.
What about like Herman's Hermits or the
You know,
Animals?
I got to pull for the Animals. If I'm throwing one in the ring here, it's Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood.
All right. I might argue with you, but I can't right now. But I might, because I think we're gonna have a hard question to answer. Okay, so please don't let me. Court, what do you want to save from your list? Which your list is so good, uh, because it's just like they're all such unique songs that no one else thought of, and like you took some chances, you took some big swings, and you hit a couple of triples off the wall. What do you want to save from your list?
I would say Chad and Jeremy Painted Dayglow Smile is a must listen for people. So I would argue for that.
Okay. Then you know what? Okay. All right. So you're saying Chad and Jeremy. What's the song called? Painted?
Dayglow, Dayglow, Smile.
And you know what? In the spirit of Court going to bat for something less known, I'm gonna switch my pick for something I'm gonna argue for. I'm gonna go with Go Now from the Moody Blues. In the spirit of like, if you release this as a list, hopefully people will check it out. Maybe especially the songs they haven't heard before. I really want people to hear Go Now.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna ask you guys to send me your list, and then I'll make a Spotify playlist that include a link to,
Cool.
so that we can give people the choice to expose themselves to all of these songs. Guys, help me out, because with my list, I'm really torn between I freaking love Bus Stop, but I also love the Animals House of the Rising Sun. I'm kind of leaning towards the Animals.
Between those two, as much as I think I prefer House of the Rising Sun as a song, but as a British Invasion
okay,
entry, I think it's Bus Stop all the way.
Okay, yeah, you've got a really great point. Bus Stop. Okay, so we've got the Kinks. You really got me. The Zombies. She's not there. Go Now, by the Moody Blues. Chad and Jeremy, Painted Dayglow Smile, and Bus Stop. Now, what's number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
I think that 5 should be, as it was in my list, You Really Got Me Now. I think it kind of skates in there, like it deserves to be in the top 5, but I don't think it holds a candle to anything else that we've put on this list.
Okay. Good point. Court, where do you want to put Chad and Jeremy? Do you want to put it at number 4, or do you think it should be deeper?
I don't know. Since it's hard to say, since I don't know how, I don't think you guys are very familiar with it. So other than personally liking that song so much, I don't know that I could argue for it being higher up just due to their lower stature in the in the overall listings of bands. They don't come up as much, and so I guess you got to knock them a couple points for that, as much as it pains me. So I'm willing to accept that at number 4.
Okay, but you got them in, like,
Yes.
just on your being core and us knowing that you know your shit. We're gonna say, like, all right, we're gonna put them in. So they're at number 4. Chad and Jeremy. Painted Dayglow. I'm hoping that I find some of this stuff at the Goodwill and at the shops later on today, that it's like my mandatory weekend thing. All right, so what we have left is we've got Bus Stop, we've got the Moody Blues, and we've got the Zombies. And do we want to go 3 the Moody Blues, 2 Bus Stop, 3 we want to go Zombies number 1, Bus Stop number 2, and Moody Blues number 3?
That sounds good to me.
Sure.
That actually sounds very fair.
Okay, so Moody Blues go now. Number 2. What did we say? The Zombies number 2, or no? Bus Stop was number 2.
Bus Stop was number 2, and then Zombies was number 1. I hope you weren't expecting a fight, because Court and I are very agreeable people.
No,
we don't have a good time, man.
The Zombies. I think this is a really solid list because it's not the radio friendly, Beatles influenced, Rolling Stones influenced songs that some of our picks were like very radio friendly, very Beatles influenced. But I think we're really kind of all over the place. So number 5, The Kinks, You Really Got Me. Number 4, Chad and Jeremy, Painted Dayglow, Smile. Number 3, The Moody Blues, Go Now. Number 2, The Hollies, Bus Stop. And number 1, The Zombies, She's Not There. As much as we raved about the Animals, we decided to leave them off the list because, I mean, you had the Animals at your they were 2 number 1s did not make the top 5, which is kind of unprecedented.
I think it's, in the spirit of not even fairness, but just representation. I think that other things deserve a little more spotlight that haven't got their due,
And I also think that Eric Burden would be okay with not having made this list. Like, he'd be like, because the thing about Eric Burden is, like, he leaves, comes to San Francisco, right, and like starts jamming with War. Like, like, of all that is so crazy. Like, that really took, like, for my brain to put that together. Because like being a Mexican kid growing up in Bakersfield, like, War was just something that was handed down to you. You're like, you have to like this. Like, they give every little Mexican kid War and Santana, like, when they're 7. They're like, here you go. This is your stuff. Go. And then, and when I was like, wait, that's Eric Burden?
Yeah.
That made no sense to me, but it makes a lot of sense to me now because he was just still exploring American music, Yeah. So this list was a lot of fun. It was challenging. I gotta admit, I was like, what the fuck? think I'm gonna tell them no. I almost threw back the caveat of, okay, we could only pick one Beatles and one Rolling Stone song. But I was like, no, dude, like get out of your comfort zone and learn something. And I absolutely did. And you guys brought one of the things I love about Dad Rock, and even just like when I was on the we're not sure if it was the first show or not, but when I was on that show, I was like, you guys blew me away with your knowledge of stuff. And I was like, I knew I wanted to have you guys on for a while until I finally reached out, and I was so glad that you guys agreed. So how's Dad Rock going? How's Dad Rock going? You guys still having fun with that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a hoot. We're doing some kind of off the beaten path stuff coming up soon. We're doing Eels. We're doing Simon and Garfunkel soon. It's gonna be some fun stuff. Yeah, we've been getting a kick out of it.
That's great. I recently found I think it's right here. Please let it be right here. Found this for $2 at the Goodwill the other day.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a Goodwill standard. Like you're gonna find that. You're gonna find whipped cream and other delights, Herb Alpert. Like you're gonna find certain things anytime you go.
Why is there so much Herb?
Because I'll tell you why. It's something that people purchase and then take home because they think they gotta have it, and then they hang on to it for too long. I'm not saying it's bad music. It's great music, but it's not music that most of our culture listens to. So then it finds itself back into those bins when people inevitably move and they realize they have too many records, and that's a pain in the ass to move. And Herb Alpert is the first to go. I've given up several copies of Whipped Cream and Other Delights.
Yeah, I see so much Herb Alpert. It's just like, and Chuck Mangione.
Oh yeah.
Which
are great records. People should listen to Chuck Mangione. Like seriously, especially Live at the Hollywood Bowl. That's the only one that I like listen to semi regularly. Maybe like once a year, I'll listen to Live at the Hollywood Bowl. So good.
Right on. Do you do vinyl, or are you listening to streaming?
I do have too many records, but I don't really listen to it that often. Mostly if I'm listening to music, like laying in bed with headphones and Spotify while I'm playing some dumb video game or something. That's most of the time. Or in the car. I listen to most music in the car. So clearly I'm not dropping the needle on my commute. But yeah, I do have records. I don't collect it like I used to. And going back to what I was saying before, I think I've moved too many times to really instill the fact that you can have too many records, because it's a real pain in the ass to move. Yeah.
What about you, Court? Are you spinning vinyl or
I have quite a few. I like to keep my local record stores. Those relief checks got to go somewhere.
Yeah. I would love to shout out Phono Select Records on Fruit Ridge. I love that store. Dale, and I'm not sure the other guy's name. Dale seems to be the guy that runs it, and
I forget.
Gary? I don't know. I love going in there, and I love it when there's nobody in there and we just talk for 15-20 minutes. And they're great guys. And Kicksville Vinyl, Kicksville Vintage in downtown, another great store. The Cave out in Folsom, but it's so overwhelming because they have everything. Like they've got like Funko Pops, they've got t-shirts, they've got sneakers, they've got everything. So it gets a little bit overwhelming, but I've found some gems at a good price out there too. So all right, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to chatting with you guys again soon. And Court, I got to get you these Beach Boy records before you leave. I mean, I hope some. Are you dreading making the move, and are all your records going to make it with you?
I'm gonna try to bring them. There might be a few things that I'll I'll ditch that are just not too important to me. But I tend to just buy the records of. I have a pretty clear picture of which records I want to have and which ones I don't want to have. And so while my collection is always growing, I don't think I buy records compulsively anymore. I'll usually sit and think about it for a while if it's one that I really want, and if I still want it like a couple weeks later, then I'll consider looking for it. But I'm gonna try and move them safely.
I wish I had that discipline. Corey, it looked like you were getting ready to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to plug our show, if that's okay. Like, as far as time and where to find it.
Yes, absolutely.
If people liked hearing our voice on your wonderful show, they can catch us every Thursday through the Stab Comedy Theater channels on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, all that stuff. It's 6 o'clock Dad Rock Talk. And we do that every 6 o'clock on Thursdays. And we talk about all sorts of just dad rock stuff. And it's, as we were kind of talking at the top of the show, it's a pretty vague, rule as far as dad rock. So we get into a lot of interesting stuff. And we have fun guests all the time. So yeah, check it out.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming on the show, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Awesome.